If you had a chance, what would you ride to get to space? Well, the answer is a no-brainer: SpaceX Dragon. Given the Boeing Starliner scandals, even astronauts trained to face the most dangerous situations are afraid to bet their lives on this spacecraft. And their insecurity is escalating while the first Starliner operational mission, following its crew flight test, is coming closer. Public pressure once again forced NASA to make a vital decision, canceling this dangerous mission. Find out everything in today's episode of Techmap. On Tuesday, June 18th, NASA and Boeing leadership held a teleconference to discuss the status of the agency's Boeing crew flight test. Additionally, they provided pre-departure details as teams prepare to return NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams to Earth from the International Space Station. The current tension mainly comes from two major hardware issues that Starliner has been facing, including 5 separate helium leaks and the failure of 5 out of 28 reaction control system thrusters. Currently, engineers from NASA and Boeing have still been studying two problems, and on Saturday, when the vehicle went through the thruster firing test, they had an opportunity to look at both. Talking about the 5th leak after docking, they said,
"It's a very small leak that we saw after docking. So that's the 5th leak. It's the smallest of all that we've seen, and very similar to what we saw on OFT-2.
In August 2021, after the failed first attempt, Starliner joined the second orbital flight test, but it was stopped late in the countdown due to unexpected valve position indications in the propulsion system. The valves had been corroded by the intrusion of moisture, which interacted with the propellant, but the source of the moisture was not apparent. The OFT-2 mission then occurred on May 19, 2022, when the vehicle docked with the ISS and returned successfully, but its thrusters failed during the orbital insertion burn and docking. The engineering team, afterward, tried to apply 2 small software fixes, but to no avail because they did not address the root cause. Until the first crew flight test, the thruster system hit trouble again, and of course, it's unclear whether they can completely resolve the problem at this time.
On the hot fire on Saturday, we isolated the helium manifolds again, and then we looked at those leak rates, and I would say every single manifold that we looked at, after 9 days being docked, we saw the leak rates going down.
So how much does that rate decrease? An example is given, the port helium manifold 2, or the P2D2 flange leak.
This time, it was 11.5 standard cubic centimeters per minute. That's standard cubic centimeters per minute after the docking when we closed the ISO valves. And then after the hot fire, it was 5.6, so it kind of had reduced in half again.
According to him, it was reduced in half again every single manifold. This gave engineers confidence about the large reserves of helium, up to 7 hours of helium and 70 hours of margin to get to the deorbit burn. The reaction control system thrusters also look normal throughout tests.
We also used our Canada arm to do an inspection of the thrusters that Steve mentioned. We did this in front of the hot fire test, and everything looked nominal. And of course, as you heard Steve.
So how about you? Do you think everything is now going smoothly as they confidently announced? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, if you find this useful, please give us a share, like, and subscribe. Your support will be a huge motivation for us to release more quality videos in the future, and now let's come back. Throughout the teleconference, NASA expressed its caution on Starliner's crewed flight test because it is its first attempt with humans aboard.
The whole team has been focused on understanding what's happening with this vehicle for the crewed flight test and our plan for returns.
However, that does not mean they are confident on Starliner 1. Also called Post-Certification Mission 1, PCM-1, Boeing Starliner 1 is planned to be the first operational crewed mission of the Boeing Starliner to the ISS as part of the Commercial Crew Program. It will be the 4th orbital flight mission of the Starliner overall. It is scheduled to launch no earlier than early 2025, transporting members of a future ISS expedition. That time is simultaneous with the Crew 10 mission, NASA's 10th operational flight on Dragon. Thus, there is likely a consideration between SpaceX Dragon or Boeing Starliner for this slot. The answer is off the table. The astronauts themselves would not dare to risk their lives on this much-troubled vehicle, especially since this marks its first operational flight. Even a Russian cosmonaut is not expected to be on board, as Roscosmos has stated they do not want to put Russian cosmonauts on Starliner until it has flown successful commercial crew program flights. For those who don't know, In 2022, Joel Montalbano, the manager of NASA's International Space Station program, unveiled to the media the Russian-U.S. agreement on integrated space missions. According to him, after the Boeing crew flight test passes, the agency will do an update to the agreement and work with Russian colleagues such that its long-term goal is to have integrated crews on all the missions. They wanted to have a couple of Boeing missions moving forward, and right after CFT, they will be putting that into work. Unfortunately, at present, given the technical glitches and delays with no sign of the end, everybody has not even known when Starliner could come back home, let alone conduct its first operational mission. If NASA still insists on sending people on Starliner next year, they would have to push Starliner 1's date further to the next available slot, August or September at the earliest, for example. Or it is after Starliner's several cargo missions to verify this vehicle is reliable. Another option is to shift Starliner's crewed version to the cargo version forever. Human safety is always the top priority. This is confirmed by Steve Stitch, the program manager for NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Although he did not specify details, he hinted that Starliner 1 is a long-term goal.
We haven't looked ahead too much to Starliner 1. As Mark said, we know we've got to go, address the helium leaks. We're not going to go fly another mission like this with the helium leaks. We've got to go understand what the rendezvous profile is doing that's causing the thrusters to have low thrust and then be deselected by the flight control teams.
The detailed plan, as he said, will be discussed in summer and after the vehicle returns to Earth.
But we'll do so at the right time, later this summer, lay out all the work in front of us after this vehicle comes back with the crew, and then figure out what the path forward is.
The latest news shows that Boeing Starliner's stay in ISS will be increased by 4 days, allowing the team to review all available data about the performance of the Starliner spacecraft before clearing the vehicle to return to Earth.
It go to undock, and it will undock at the appropriated time, which is 2:10 GMT or 9:10 Central on June 25th.
This would set up a landing at 4:51 ET on June 26th at the White Sands Test Facility in New Mexico. Despite the postponement, uncertainties, and concerns, Stitch did not forget to emphasize how much the astronauts loved this vehicle and this mission.
They were anxious, excited, and happy to be there. You can tell every time they get in Starliner, they love the vehicle, they love Starliner, and they're so happy to be a part of the mission.
It's clear NASA and Boeing have still been determined not to call any rescue mission and let Starliner carry Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore by itself back home. Well, nothing can change their minds, so let's pray for the two astronauts to have a safe trip. And that just about wraps it up for today's episode. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next time.